episode number 69.
This episode is brought to you by our Career Kickstart coaching program, where we help ambitious working mums who are feeling stuck, overwhelmed, or frustrated to take the best next step in their careers. Making the right career move can be hard enough, and when you add motherhood into the mix, well, things can get really complicated. So through our program, we can help you to ditch the frustration and the overwhelm and get to a place where you are loving your work and life. So if this sounds good to you, then head over to our website at lightboxcoaching.com to find out more information.
Hi, you're listening to the Careers Beyond Motherhood podcast with your host, Janine Esbrand. I'm here to help working mums like you to thrive in your careers and in motherhood. I share tips, strategies, and inspirational conversations with awesome women to help reduce the struggle in your juggle.
Time for a say, Mummy.
Hello, and welcome to the show. How are you? I hope you are well. I am not doing so well. I have tonsillitis, which is not great, especially when I was home with my little people today. And I have to say, the hardest thing about motherhood is not being able to take a sick day. You know, when you just feel like I need to lie down, but you can't, you just have to keep going. So I was waiting until my husband came home so I could lie down, and I am recording this podcast from my sofa. But I committed to getting out every week so that I can be consistent, and so that is why I'm recording in this state. So we are continuing on with our career change series with a really important topic. So recently I've been asked to speak on the topic of negotiation quite a lot, and in my discussions with ladies at these events after I have spoken, I recognize that many ladies out there, ambitious women, talented women, struggle with negotiation, and many are reluctant to negotiate or lack confidence in that area. And I think that the reluctance to negotiate is just one of the factors that contribute to the gender pay gap. And today I have the pleasure of speaking to an awesome lady who is a gender pay gap consultant. And we are going to dive in and talk about her interesting journey, how she got into this line of work, but also some real practical tips for you on negotiation and how you can be approaching them much more effectively. So without further ado, let's jump into my conversation with Michelle Gyimah.
Hi, Michelle. Thank you so much for joining us today on the show. It is lovely to have you. Could you introduce yourself to the audience and tell us a bit about you?
My name is Michelle Gyimah, and I'm a gender pay gaps consultant. So essentially, I work with medium-sized employers to help them close their pay gaps. I kind of fell into it because I worked for the Equality and Human Rights Commission for quite a few years, and I feel like my eyes were open to the whole raft of issues to do with gender equality. And I essentially worked for them about 10 years and decided that I wanted to do it freelance. I just felt that I knew I had so much knowledge, but I wanted to share it in a different way, whether it's with firms or individual women. And so that's how I've kind of fallen into this work, essentially.
Awesome. So exciting. I have so much I want to ask you about it. Before we do that, can you tell me a bit about your journey into motherhood and with your career? So what did your career kind of look like before you were a mum, and then how has it changed since, if it has changed at all?
Yeah, well, I guess my story is going to be very similar to a lot of women in the sense that I did what everyone else does, which is, I work full time. I travel to an office. It was, Monday to Friday, 9 to 5. Because of the work that I did, I was a policy manager for the Equality and Human Rights Commission. I worked with a lot of employers, so sometimes that meant traveling away from home, going to London quite a lot for meetings and running seminars and workshops, and it was all very exciting, not very glamorous, but it was all very exciting. And I kind of got to a point where me and my partner talked about having a family, and we kind of had an idea of a time in our lives that we wanted to do it. And I think I just got a bit restless, and I enjoyed my work, but I just felt that there was something missing. And you know what it's like when you're working in a workplace, kind of office politics can get to you a bit. And I just thought, I'm not really sure. I just kind of want to continue on. So we brought our plans forward to have children, because that's what I wanted to do. So I had my first baby, and I guess, like most people, it was a bit of a shock of what that entailed. All the books that you read, or didn't read in my case, can't really prepare you for what it's like to suddenly be in charge of this human. And my eldest son is 6 now, and I still remember the first day that my partner went back to work, when he was really small, because my partner I think he had 3 months off with me.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, which was really great. So I still remember the first day he went back to work, and I felt like I'd just been I don't know, run over by a massive truck, because suddenly I'd gone from having a partner around to help me, to just being on my own. And I think I had all these plans for like a bit of housework, a bit of this, bit of that. And he came home at like 6 o'clock, and like nothing had been done. And I was sat on the couch, like frazzled. Baby was asleep, frazzled. And he was like, I can't believe this hasn't been done, and that hasn't been done, that hasn't done. And I remember just not having the energy even to muster up an argument as to how busy the day had been. And I just was sat there open mouth looking at him, because it was just so different being completely alone from how it was the 3 months we had together. So that was a bit of an introduction. And it's funny that that's one of the things I always remember, just the shock. I think that's what it was, the sheer shock of what it was like to be in charge of a baby by yourself for the first time. And so I had my maternity, and then I decided that I wanted to set up my own business. So I was fortunate enough that my business was going through restructuring, and I could take voluntary redundancy. So I took that. So I set up an HR consultancy to start off with, because that was kind of the world that I knew, and I thought that would be a safe kind of plan for me, because I was in the world of equalities, and it kind of branches onto HR, so I decided to do that. But to be honest, for the first couple of years, it wasn't really working out, so I had to go back to work. And boy, was that a shock, because I felt that, not only did I have all the skills from my previous job, but I had all these new skills about, running a business and marketing, managing your time, and, social media, all these things that I'd never known before. I suddenly had to teach myself to do. But I had one caveat, and my caveat was, I have a child, he will be in nursery, but I didn't want to work 5 days a week. I was looking for 4 days a week, meaningful work that paid well. Could I find anything? No. I couldn't find anything that would stretch me, would use my skill set. The only options for me to have that type of job was if it was full time. So in the end, as I felt like my options were getting smaller and smaller, and I was feeling more and more desperate because I needed to get some work coming in, I ended up taking a full-time job and just hoping that I'd be able to negotiate a day off a week after I had proved myself or embedded myself into the organization, which is what I did. And that was the point when I had realized that all of the theory that I had been learning in my day job, I suddenly experienced it all. So I was well aware of that kind of discrimination against particularly women trying to get back into the workplace after taking time out to look after their families. But it wasn't until that moment where it hit me, like how demeaning it is, and how soul destroying it is, and the impact it has on your confidence. So for a long time I felt that I wasn't very good. I was working in a job that had nothing to do with my previous skill set, and I wasn't being stretched at all, but I took it because I knew that there was a chance that I'd be able to negotiate some flexible working down the line, which I did. And so I felt I was having to trade off flexible working for the possibility of a career, and at the time flexible working was what I needed. So that's kind of where I was. So in terms of work and motherhood, it's been an eye-opening experience, but I've since learned that this story is definitely not unique to me at all.
Yeah, it's such a shame, because there's so many women that face the same thing. A lot of the clients that I work with feel like the options are really limited. There are so many talented women, and they've worked really hard to get to where they are in their careers, and they take time off to have a baby, but all of those skills are not gone. They don't disappear. So it's a shame that employers are not being more accommodating, and some are, but there's a long way to go.
Yeah.
Because if you can take on a working mum who is a professional woman who is dedicated, you're going to get someone who's going to work really hard, because they need to leave on time to go pick up the kids, and there's no dilly dallying in terms of getting the work done. They will get their heads down, get the work done. And so yeah, it's a shame that so many women face that challenge, and I think it's about finding and championing those employers who are embracing flexible working and are recognizing the value in that pool of talent.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
So for you, once you kind of went back and then was working within that organization, you got your flexibility, then what happened next for you? Did you go back out and freelance again, or what was the next step for you?
Well, I stayed in that organisation. I was working for a university. I stayed there for about 18 months, and it was a mixture of, I've got this job, so I'm just going to get my head down and keep it for as long as I can, because I was able to negotiate working a 4-day week. But I always felt at the back of my mind that, like you said, I still had all of those skills and all that knowledge that wasn't being utilised, and I was in a job that, they were great to me and really helpful and really nice people, but it wasn't a career choice. It was more of a career must. I had to have a job, so I took that. So I was always mindful of the fact that this wasn't going to be my forever role. And so I still tried to keep the business going, which, looking back, I faced such burnout because I was working 4 days a week, then I had to have my son 1 day a week, and then kind of before work and after work I was like trying to cram in time to get the business off the ground, which was quite testing quite a lot of the time.
It sounds very familiar to my life.
Yeah.
Which is crazy. Although we've moved into a new phase now, so I'm quite excited that I'm not going to be doing that crazy jumping.
Oh yeah, looking back I just think, oh my god, how and why. But fast forward a few years later, and I can happily say, I'm reaping the rewards of it. But when I was in the thick of it, I was just basically constantly always tired. And it brought up quite a few resentments, relationship wise, because I was basically never present. I was always off trying to squeeze something out of every minute of every day, which wasn't good for relationship, wasn't good for my health. And there was actually a point where I took a step back from my business. I think I took about 3 months off, where I just left it, because it was just mentally and physically too much for me, and I was starting to wonder if I should even bother, should I just settle and go back to just go back into the workplace, because my dream was to be freelance. But by a twist of fate, a job came up at my old place that I used to work at, and it was around working with employers to help them to support working parents in the workplace better. And I was like, this has got my name written all over it. And so so I applied for that and went back to my old workplace, and it was nice to see lots of old faces, and interesting to meet new people that had joined since I'd left. And I found myself in a position where I had the flexibility that I wanted. It was well paid, it was meaningful, and it wasn't full time, and it was great. The only thing was, it was fixed term contract, but I was kind of like, that's fine, I can do this for a year, or for 2 years if it gets extended. But as fate would have it, the contract ended. When did it end now? It was in December 2018, but I had my second baby in September 2018 anyway. So I was entering, the newborn motherhood phase again. So my littlest now is 7 months.
Aww.
7 months old, yeah. And she's just started nursery. So I'm in the, so I'm back freelancing, but this time there's no burnout. There's no spinning my wheels going, where are the clients? They're not coming.
You've done the groundwork now.
Yeah, exactly. It's actually a business. I actually have clients, but it's so interesting it's a different juggle to when you have a job, because a job is kind of steady. You've got a manager who expects things of you. There's some structure. But now I'm like, mom of 2 kids, a baby who's not sleeping through the night, and I'm my own boss, and it's an interesting time to be me.
Exciting though, exciting.
Yeah, it is exciting. Yeah.
Oh, so all of the work that you've been doing, it would be great to kind of hear from you your thoughts on negotiating on the salary front for
Mhm.
women who are returning. So we have lots of women who listen to the podcast and who are in my community who head back to work and might find themselves in a similar position to what you described, where they're heading back. It might not necessarily be exactly the type of role that they want, but they see it as a stepping stone.
Yeah.
But I know that women are notorious for not necessarily bringing up the money um, issue or going back and negotiating. Sometimes they just accept whatever's offered at the
Mhm.
beginning. So do you have any kind of thoughts and tips around how best to approach it so that you can get the best, deal, as it were, when you're going into a new role?
Yeah, I think the first thing is you do have to do some work on your money mindset, and your money mindset is basically your attitude to money. And for a lot of people, women in particular, we find it really hard to talk about money. I know that when I was going through issues with burnout, doing my business and stuff, I was really burying my head in the sand over the fact that I had a business and I'm doing like inverted quotes, air quotes, but it wasn't making any money. But it was something it was like a source of shame that I didn't want to talk about for ages. And as a result, I was getting more and more, into debt, and it was causing lots and lots of problems. But it's about, but that for me was about not wanting to talk about money and feeling that that's not something that is discussed. But the reality is we all need it to function, to live. We've all got bills to pay, etc. And so I would say if you're in a position where you've been out of the workplace for a while and you're stepping back in, you need to just be prepared to talk about money. And also it's okay to negotiate. I think one of the things I always used to say is, because I used to do work around women and money and stuff, one of the things I used to say is that when an employer puts out the job spec and the benefits and the salary, it's not necessarily set in stone. They're putting out what they think they can pay you, but
Mm,
there's nothing to say that you can't ask for more. There's nothing to say that there aren't more goodies under the table that if you were to start probing a bit more, you would find out about. And it's not to say that all men negotiate, but more men negotiate. And the
yeah.
worst that can happen is that they'll say no. And then literally it's like, so what? So what if they say no? And I think overcoming that fear of hearing the word no, or that fear of being viewed as that person who asked for more money, I think that is something that's a real stumbling block for a lot of women. But my advice would be to think about the end product. Think about what it is that you actually need. There's no point taking a salary that's below what you need, because that will just cause you so much stress further down the line. The other thing to
Mm,
think about is your pension. At the moment there's a 40% gap between pension earnings for men and women, and us women, we live longer than men, so we so we need that money. So that's something to think about. But also, the amount of money that you earn now, it does impact on your confidence in yourself, and how you feel about your work and your value. And if you're not earning what you think you should, that really impacts that. But it's not necessarily true. But again, it's up to you as a person to ask for more. Very, very few employers are going to come back and say, well, we said that the starting salary is this, you've only asked for X, but actually we think what you should be asking for is Y. Very, very few
mm.
do that. So it's up to you to think about, what do I need and what do I want, and start to move towards being more confident about asking for what you want.
Yeah, I think that is so, so important. I think often people are not really thinking about, okay, but this is what I need to live the lifestyle, or live the way that I want to live. And so if I'm going to work this many hours of
Yeah.
my day, then I should be in a position where I'm living the lifestyle that I want to live. And I think it comes down to, really, if you don't ask, you don't get. So you have to put yourself out there sometimes and just ask the question. And if you do have that mindset that, okay, the worst that can happen is they say no, it's a lot easier to go into it with the thought that, yeah, I'm going to ask and see what happens.
Yeah, exactly. And you know, it's like everything. If you can prepare for a job interview, you can prepare for, you know, a negotiation. You know, the negotiation question. So it's all about knowing for yourself what are your must-haves and what are your nice-to-haves, and then you know, and presenting that. If you get to a stage where they've interviewed you and they've said that you're the best person, then they clearly want you. So there's no harm in going the extra mile and saying, you know, I'd really love to work for you. You know, I'd like to have a conversation with you about, you know, the salary expectations, and you know, and it sets you up in a good light, and then you become that person that's confident enough to ask for what you're worth. And I think there's absolutely nothing wrong with it. You know, it happens all of the time, but nobody talks about it. I think that's the issue, because nobody talks about it. People don't know that they have the right to, that it's okay to do. I mean, I didn't know that salary negotiation was a thing until one of my managers about 8 years ago gave me a book and said, Michelle, I think you should read this. And I read it, and it was amazing. And I remember thinking, you're allowed to ask for more money. That was like a proper light bulb moment for me. And I think it's probably the same for a lot of women, you know, but it's a skill in being confident enough to do it. But the rewards will be so great, because they'll follow you throughout your career. Every time you take that next step up, you ask for a bit more money, and it accumulates across the years. So it's definitely worth not leaving money on the table just for fear of asking.
Yeah. And can you remember the name of the book? It would be good to be able to put a link to it in the show notes.
It is, it's upstairs. It's something like why women don't ask, something
Okay.
along those lines. It's a few years old now, but it was a real eye opener. Where I think it was two American professors had done studies around who asks for pay rises and who doesn't, you know, across gender lines. And it was really, really interesting book. I think I've like got loads of stuff underlined in it. And since then, there's been, you know, lots more books written, and obviously you have all the lean in circles, etc. So
Yeah.
there's, you know, so the conversation is coming up, but I think it's just more about women feeling empowered enough to do it for themselves. And I think I've got some resources that I need to put on my website actually around how to deal with objections, because that's one of the big things. People worried about pushback and resistance and thinking, oh, well, if they don't say yes straight away, I'm just going to kind of run off and scuttle into a hole. And it's like, no, there's a whole skill set around, you know, doing the back and forth around, you know, getting to a place where you both want to be. So
Yeah.
I can find the link to that and give you the link for that as well, because I think people might find that quite useful in helping them to get into that space of, it's okay to ask, it's also okay to hear no, but this is how I'm going to tackle a no if I get it.
Yeah. Yeah, that is brilliant. And I think it goes to it's the same kind of approach when you're asking for a pay rise. So not only when you're first negotiating that offer, but for pay rise, and then also when you're returning back to work and you're saying, okay, I want to work on a part-time basis. You might have been working full-time before. It's recognizing that when you're going into things, you're not just blindly going in, you're also thinking about, well, what is it that I bring to the organization? What's my skill set that's going to be valuable to them, and why is it that they would want me to stay? Having all of those things in the forefront of your mind can help you in your negotiations, so that you're not just going in saying, okay, I want more money, or okay, I want flexibility, but you're saying, and this is why I think it's good for the organization, and how I'm going to make it work, or how I'm going to be able to contribute. That's something that people should think about too. And I've seen a few of my clients use that kind of approach and been successful in their negotiations for flexibility.
Yeah, exactly. And sometimes it's, you know, it's one of those things where it's almost like you're reminding your employer why you're good at what you do, and you're reminding them of, you know, your value. Because sometimes it can be so easy to just, you know, turn up at work every day and think, oh, because I'm doing a good job and because I meet my targets, you know, I'm a valued employee. But the reality is that sometimes, you know, managers in particular, just, they might kind of be taking you for granted. And if you're going to step out and say, well, you know, I want something different, whether it's more pay, you know, more flexibility, you know, or better benefits, you're re-reminding them why you deserve it, and saying it's not just about what you're asking for, but it's about what you're able to give them. I've been giving you this over these years, and if I get these benefits, you know, these are the extra things that I'll be able to give you as well. So it's like a branding exercise for yourself within the organization that you're in, whether it's to do with money or flexibility or anything else.
Yeah. Oh, so good, so good. And so I know, I know now you kind of work more with organisations around gender pay gap and closing that gap. So, what are some of the kind of key things that you would say if anyone's listened to this and they work for an organisation that has established that their gap is way too big? What are some of the things that you could say are ways that they tackle it to start off with? Because I imagine for many organisations it seems like a big kind of thing to tackle.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, and you know, it's an intrinsic problem that's been going on for years, and I find it quite interesting that all the headlines are like, oh, the pay gap's widened, this reporting hasn't, you know, made a difference. And I think, well, if it's been going on for years, you know, 1 or 2 years of reporting is not going to make a huge difference. But I think it's important for organizations to remember that your end goal will be around, you know, closing the figure, because, you know, that data's out there, it's very stark, and people can make, you know, assumptions about you based on that. But for me, the important thing is about setting smaller, measurable, sustainable goals that will get you to where you want to go. So it's not about focusing on the end, but it's about focusing on the journey. Because for me, gender pay gap reporting is about looking at the business behaviors and cultures of an organization and examining, well, where are these gaps? Where are we falling down? Where are there biases that are kind of embedded in our processes, and what can we do to try and reverse them? So if organizations can focus on the culture of their business, how they do business, how they recruit, what's the experience of people that work for them, they will start to see sustainable change. Because you don't want to be in a position where, you know, you make some changes and for 1 year your pay gap is really small, and then it rises again. You want to see that year on year improvement, and you want people to feel valued in your organization, and feel that as an organization that, you know, you care about your employees, and you care about people who are talented rising within the organization from diverse backgrounds. So it's about looking at, you know, the business culture, not just the number of, you know, whatever the pay gap is, but the experience of people that are in your organization. And you want to be reflecting that back out, because it's also a bit of a recruitment aspect too. I was giving a talk to some graduates, and they were really nervous about this pay gap reporting. And it's because, you know, they have ideas of who they want to work for, but then they'd be faced with that dilemma. Well, what if the organization I want to work for has a massive pay gap? You know, do I want to work for that organization? So it's about doing that work around business cultures and attitudes, but showcasing what it is you're doing to try and you know, rectify the mistakes of the past.
Really good, really good. I think it's great to have you kind of talk about it, because I think in the, you know, you see in the press and everyone's talking about doing the pay gap, but then it's like, okay, but then what's the next step? And yeah, it's good to hear kind of both sides from the organization point of view, and then potential people that are going to be working for these organizations and how they're viewing it. So that's awesome. So one of the things I like to ask my guests is whether or not they have kind of a quote or a mantra or a saying that they like and that they live by, because I'm a lover of quotes and I love to learn new things. So do you have one that you would share?
Yeah, there's two. The first one is, I think it's everything that you ever want is on the other side of fear. I think that's George Adair, I think it is. And the other one, I'm not sure who said it, but it is, if not me, then who? And if not now, then when? And for me, especially because I run my own business, it's, you know what it's like. It's so easy to kind of let your fears get in the way of taking action, and I really do sometimes have to stop and think about those two things and focus on that end goal. Okay, what is it I'm trying to achieve? Right, well, if I want to achieve that, then it means I have to do this, even if I feel uncomfortable. even if I feel too tired, even if I feel like I can't be bothered,
Yeah.
or whatever, whatever's going on. I've still got to show up, and I've still got to do this work. And so they are the two things that I kind of pull out when I'm feeling like less than 100% to try and move myself forward.
Yeah, I love that. I love that because I think that it is easy as well with social media and the fact that we have access to information all the time to feel like, oh, so many people are doing this work, or there's other people that are doing it. Do I even need to bother? Do I even need to contribute? But I think it's so important to recognize that you are, the only person in the world that is you, and therefore you're the only person that's going to be able to contribute to whatever it is that you're doing in the way that you would.
Yeah.
And so regardless of however many other people are doing things or how you feel about showing up, you have to recognize that there might be someone that only you would be able to help in this way. And so if this is what you feel passionate about doing, then you have to go ahead and do it.
Oh yeah, totally. Because I mean, how many, I don't know how many pieces of software are there out there to, I don't know, write email newsletters. There's loads, but you end up picking one. You pick one that resonates with you, and it's the same with how many coaches are out there. Tons, but you pick the person that resonates with you. So, I always think there's enough work around for everybody. But people just find their tribe. They find who they gel with. And if that works for other people, then obviously that will work for me. There'll be lots of people talking about what I do, but not everybody will want to work with me, and that's okay. But there will be somebody. There'll be at least one person.
Yeah, exactly. And it reminds me, I was somebody had posted on I think it was Instagram or one of the social media platforms, and it was like a picture of a supermarket aisle that had bread, and it had like there was about 50 different types of bread in that aisle, and then the kind of caption was now tell me that there's someone else doing what it is that you want to do. Like there's so many different types of bread. Yes, there is, but everybody likes different bread, so it's fine. There's so many different types of bread. And I thought that was brilliant. Every time I think, oh my gosh, there's so many people out there doing what I'm doing, I'm like I remember that, and I'm like, no, but there's only one me, so go ahead and carry on.
Yeah, I like that. I'm gonna visualize bread.
Yes, if I can find it, I'll send you a screenshot of it. Michelle, thank you. Thank you so much for coming to join us today. If people want to learn more about what you're doing, connect with you, where is the best place for them to find you?
I am always on LinkedIn, so just under my name, Michelle Gyimah. You can find me there. But I also have a website, which is equalitypays.co.uk.
Okay, awesome. So I'll put those in the show notes, and then people can connect with you. Thank you so much for your time today. It's been awesome speaking.
No problem. Thanks for having me. It was good fun.
I absolutely loved speaking to Michelle. She had so much goodness to share. It was great to hear about her journey and how it hasn't necessarily been smooth sailing all along, but hearing how she kind of dealt with the challenges is always encouraging, because sometimes we look around and everyone else seems to have it all together, but it's not the case. We don't necessarily see the struggle that happens before people reach success. So I'm so grateful for her being vulnerable and just sharing where things weren't working and then what she did to tweak and change things. I also like what she was saying about negotiation and the fact that she didn't even think that she could ask for more money, and I'm seeing over and over again that this is such a common mindset for many women, that the thought to actually ask for more money when negotiating for a new role or getting a pay rise doesn't come to people straight away. So I love what she shared around money mindset and really thinking about your relationship and your thought process around money. So much goodness. So following on from the talks that I've been doing on negotiation, I created a negotiation checklist that can take people through a process to follow when they are preparing for negotiation. So I'd love to share it with you as one of my listeners. So if you head over to the show notes for today, lightboxcoaching.com/episode 69, then you can grab a copy of that checklist and use it whenever you are going into your preparation for a negotiation. And also, Michelle has a new program that she's running all around negotiation skills. So I'm going to share the link to that program in the show notes because it looks great. If you want to dive deeper into developing your negotiation skills on the whole, then this program is something that you may want to check out. And if you haven't done so already, come and join us in our private Facebook group, Careers Beyond Motherhood Movement. It is growing. We're getting some fantastic ladies join us every single week. So we'd love for you to come and join us as we talk, encourage one another, share, gain insight around developing our careers and our businesses beyond motherhood. So head over to Facebook, Careers Beyond Motherhood Movement, search for that, and you can come and join us in the group. All right, that's all from me. I am going to get my head down and try and kick this tonsillitis, and I will be back with you very, very soon. Take care. Bye.
This podcast features music from Ben Sound.